Department 3D is now in session. The Honorable Judge Shapari Viapudwa presiding.
Good afternoon, everybody. And first, we are going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Owen and Wesley Fattarsi. Fattarsi, members of our legal community, and those of you that are here for the free food later. I am sorry you have the understudy today. The official swearing-in duties should be done by the presiding judge, which is Judge Loftus, and she was unable to attend, and she sends her deepest regrets. So unfortunately, you have an amateur. I would now like to introduce the dignitaries and the judicial officers that are present with us. Oh, yes. You may sit down. Thank you. I told you you have an amateur. All right, we're going to start with the dignitaries. Please hold your applause until we are finished introducing everybody. So we have Adrian Forche, who is our Assistant Court Executive Officer. If you could just give a wave. Stephanie Bohr, who is our Human Resource Manager for the courts. Ann Baird is on behalf of the Honorable Susan Eggman, the California State Assembly. Matt Lindsay is our Assistant Sheriff. Shanda Bassett is our Captain of Security Services here. Fongze Kyokum is our Treasury Tax Collector. Russell Stark, the Director of the Stockton Airport. Zoe Merrill, the Interim Community Development Department, Interim Director. Rachel DeBoard, the Clerk of the Board. Miriam Lyle, our Public Defender. Tori Gerber Salazar, our District Attorney. Edward Martel, the Chief Montezuma Fire District. Robert Oakes, the Executive Director of the San Joaquin County Bar Association. Heather Rubino, the President of the San Joaquin County Bar Association. All right, and now I'm going to introduce our judges. And I'm going to start in the far back row, working from the aisle in. We have Judge Ronald Northrup, Judge Bernie Garber, our senior jurist, Judge Robert Johnson, Judge John Soldati, Judge Gus Ferreira, Judge Charlotte Orchett, and then moving down here we have Honorable Judge William Murray of the 3rd District Court of Appeals. We have Honorable Judge Consuelo Callahan of the 9th Circuit. We have Judge Anthony Lucaccini, retired Judge Thomas Harrington, retired Judge David Warner. We have Judge Bill Urey, Judge Carter Hawley. We have retired Judge Ann Shargan, Judge Barbara Cronlund, Judge Christine Eagle. Moving down to the last row, we have Judge George Abdallah. We have visiting Judge Doug Mawhinney, Judge Brett Morgan, Commissioner Cheryl McCann. We have Judge Elizabeth Humphreys. And now I will introduce the Executive Committee, starting in the far back. We have Judge Dick Giuliani, Judge Mike Coughlin, Judge Seth Hoyt, Judge Lauren Thomason, Judge Robin Apple, and Judge Roger Ross. That concludes the ceremony. Actually, I'm gonna stand because I feel more comfortable standing. So, again, before we get started, I just wanted to say a few words. We're here for the formal public swearing in of Jonathan Fattarsi. And why is this public? Why we want to celebrate, yes, but why don't we do it in a private setting? But this oath is not a secret oath taken in front of a select few. This oath is open to the public, just as our courthouse and our courtrooms are open to the public. As judicial officers, we swear to uphold the rule of law, and the public can come into our courtrooms to see for themselves. This transparency instills confidence in our citizens that we are faithfully upholding the laws of our state and our country. Today we celebrate in addition to our bench. We all chose Jonathan to join us in serving the people of San Joaquin County. We know that he will do so with integrity, intelligence, compassion, and justice, and probably a little humor. So at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Tori River-Salazar to make a few comments.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the District Attorney's Office, we'd like to congratulate you, Jonathan. It's a wonderful selection to appoint you to the Commissioner of San Joaquin County. You're very fortunate to serve with a bench that I think is better than any other county and a bar that is greater than any other county in the state. You'll learn from some of the best just by being here each and every day. You and I grew up together in the office, did misdemeanors, fought it out, and went to felonies and realized, oh, we don't have to fight that hard. We did, but we enjoyed every minute of it. And I have to say, you were always professional, always ethical, always driven by doing what is right and serving your client to the best of your abilities and ensuring that the Constitution was always guaranteed and protected for everybody in that courtroom. You have tremendous kindness and passion for the job. You're committed to making a difference, and your dedication to your teammates, to the county, and to the service of the legal system is impeccable. And we're just so proud and so honored today that you're here. And I'm grateful for your friendship, for your humor, for your hard work, for challenging me in the courtroom, occasionally beating me. But I appreciate it because it was always a joy to work with you because I knew you were truthful, honest, and just incredibly kind person. And I'm very proud of you. And so congratulations on this appointment. And I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity because I know that the Constitution is guaranteed to be protected in any room that you're standing in, and especially with that robe on. And I think that everybody that comes to your courtroom will be treated with the dignity and respect, and you will have the courage to make decisions that are unpopular, that might not make others happy, but will always be the right decision. So best of luck to you and congratulations.
Now we'll hear from the lady that we stole Jonathan from, Miriam Lyle, the public defender and Jonathan's former boss.
Wow, this is awesome. That's a word that Jonathan uses a lot, and I hope you continue to use. Yes, it is a bittersweet day for the Public Defender's Office. We have lost a rock star, an amazing advocate, someone who's zealous, compassionate, has a lot of humor, is intelligent, and it is a true loss to our office and to the San Joaquin County clients. Jonathan, I've known you since before you even became an attorney. I remember you with your mullet. Even then you had chutzpah, you had passion, you had drive. In the 29 years, I've seen you go from the crazy teenage kid with the mullet to when you came into court. I had the privilege of supervising you in muni court, You were awesome. You were always zealous, always passionate. You grew into yourself. You grew as an attorney. You were an amazing prelim supervisor. You mentored attorneys. You provided guidance and always advocated and made sure that the Constitution was upheld on behalf of our clients. I want to thank the bench. You made an excellent, excellent choice. It's always gratifying to have somebody that comes from the criminal defense world that sees kind of the other side. And I know that you will continue with your passion, compassionate spirit, your understanding, always allowing people to be heard. I think if somebody can be heard or felt like they were allowed to speak, that is all that we can ask for. I really am going to miss every day Jonathan because he's so enthusiastic, positive all the time. Every day was the best day ever, and he always connected it to something. It was, this is going to be the best Thursday. I haven't been to the gym in 3 weeks ever. This is the best. Week after July 4th, still hungover, best day ever. So I was trying to think of, well, August 8th, what's that really the best day ever? So I had to look on Google, and apparently this is the best 45 days after President Nixon announced he's resigning. That was the closest I could find. I am cavelling, I am gushing, I am deeply appreciative to the bench, deeply appreciative to you for who you are, for watching your family grow up, from getting to know Sarah. The also-rans have nothing on Sarah. You have a wonderful family, wonderful children, and I look forward to many, many more years appearing before you and being your friend. So on behalf of the Public Defender's Office, Mazel Tov, congratulations, and go forth.
Panel. I'd like to. It took a man to have an all-female panel. Thank you to the court, to Commissioner Fattarsi for having me this afternoon. I do represent the San Joaquin County Bar Association. This is our 4th one this year. I'm still going to read, but I really feel like I got my confidence up, so if you need any more. Given our practice areas, Commissioner Fattarsi and I didn't have a lot of overlap and had limited ability to interact professionally. So in preparation for today, he and I went to every lawyer's favorite watering hole, Starbucks, to talk. We started the discussion because I noticed he was a runner, discussing running, but it quickly ran the gamut of life. See, I got the hang of it. From his youth, watching his father's legal career, all the way to his last trial as a public defender. It was a wonderful conversation, at least for me, and from it I was able to see what the judges who selected Commissioner Fattarsi saw in appointing him to the bench. Humility. Despite his ability to run a sub-5-minute mile, which is like seeing a unicorn in the wild for those of you who don't run, of his accomplishments, he chose always to highlight the others in his life who helped him. His colleagues at the Public Defender's Office, his family, and the bench who appointed him to his position. He was nothing if not humble about his appointment. Intention. We talked about his very first trial after he took his position at the Public Defender's Office, a domestic violence trial. He still remembered such specific facts about the case 15 years later that it struck me. I thought the details could be explained by the fact that it was his first, but as we talked and he reminisced about his expansive career, he would speak about each client or set of facts with such particularity, it could only be explained as born out of great focus and intention for his duty as a public defender. In every job, not just in the legal field, it can become easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and become complacent. Clearly, Commissioner Fattarsi did not suffer from that. Values. As we talked about Commissioner Fattarsi's new calendar at M2, he spoke with such conviction about how the consequences of minor offenses, like the loss of a driver's license, can set off a microcosm of events that can disable a person's ability to lead a productive life. It was clear from this conversation that no matter what type of case finds itself before Commissioner Fattarsi, it will be dealt with fairly and judiciously. At the end of our meeting, I asked Commissioner Fattarsi what he would say to the version of himself who started at the Public Defender's Office 15 years ago. It will all work out. And it has. Thank you again, Commissioner Fattarsi, and to the bench for your continued appointments of excellence.
All right, and now we will hear from Zoe Merrill, the Interim Director of the Community Development Department.
Good afternoon. I'm actually here to officially request that you bring back the mullet. If you could do that, that would be great. Maybe a skullet, now that we're older. We'll follow up on that. So although I was introduced as the interim director of the Community Development Department, I'm also a deputy county counsel. And that's a role within which I was honored to be a colleague of Jonathan. So I kind of am wearing two hats. I'm also wearing a third hat today, and that's that I'm here as his friend. And so you guys can call him Commissioner Fattarsi. I'm going to go with Jonathan. That works perfectly. So thank you. It's an honor to speak after such esteemed women in our legal community. I also wanted to comment on the fact that it was all women. I think that that's an incredible day. And also thank you to Owen for doing such a great job on the flag salute. So, like I said, I know Jonathan as a public defender, but that's not how I met Jonathan. I met him through his amazing wife, Sarah. So she and I met 24 years ago, which is amazing because we're both 29. Just let's do the math. At the UC Santa Barbara rowing team, and now we're neighbors and our kids are growing up together. So when Sarah introduced me to Jonathan, of course I liked him, because you can't not like Jonathan. But it didn't take long to realize that he and I had a lot more in common than just his amazing wife, Sarah. And we had more in common too than just Sarah, not just 90s pop references or cultural references or gleaming the cube quotes. Like we have a lot of that in common too. But the first thing that I noticed that we really had in common and that we shared was that we both grew up here, at least for the most part. And we can play the Remember When game, which if you're from here, you know that game. We both have a very special connection to our hometown. We're both really in love with this place and are dedicated to this place. And that really bonds us and brings us together. Also, our parents were both lawyers in the county. My mother was in the county counsel's office, his father in the public defender's office, and they knew each other long before we did. So I like to say Jonathan and I are legacy public servants. We're public servants next gen. So we both grew up with dinner conversation about trials and justice, and I will give it to you that your dad's stories were probably way better than my mom's stories, but still, you gotta get the idea. There's a consistency there. And that's not to say we grew up thinking that every day in public service was easy. As some say, overworked and underpaid and pretty often underappreciated. But even on the worst days and after the worst trials, our parents would never quit. Our parents would never have left public service because public service wasn't just their job. Public service was who they were. They served the system and they served with dedication every person in it. They served a greater good, whether people appreciated them or not. And we knew even then, even as kids, that when our parents stayed late at work, it wasn't to reach a sales quota. When they came into the office on Saturday, it wasn't because the district manager was in town. It was because that was how the wheels of justice turned. That's what we grew up understanding. It was people like our parents, that if they didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. Or even worse, I think your dad probably had the same idea that if he didn't get it done, it wouldn't get done right. That's what we grew up with, and that's what we learned. So public service wasn't and isn't, we can tell you, glamorous. It wasn't and it didn't make anybody rich, but it was a rich life. And we live that every day because that's what we grew up with, because we're legacy public servants. Next gen. So I think Jonathan and I each considered other things. I was in private practice. You probably thought about private practice because you could buy a whole lot more skateboards on a private practice salary. But ultimately, that's not who we are. Service to the judicial system and to this community, it's in Jonathan's blood. It's in his heart. And thank goodness that it is. Now, in this next generation, our kids get to hear about stories about due process and right and wrong, and about the great people we work with, right? The great people we get to serve. Do we talk about that at dinner? At our backwards dinner where we have dessert first? Those are the best. And once again, his stories are better than my stories, I'm sure. But beyond the office, Jonathan's a dedicated husband and father. He and Sarah have created a very special family. They're ubiquitous in our neighborhood. The boys are on the swim team with my daughter. Go Lincoln Lakers, right? Go Lakers! You see them in the neighborhood, headed to the pool, headed to the park, headed to paddleboard. Jonathan's a paddleboarder. Yeah, I got your back. These two are seriously complete #family goals, like in the best way. So while Jonathan represents the best of our legal community, I think it's important that we all know and understand that he represents the best of our Stockton and our San Joaquin County community also. So all of us have talked about Jonathan today. It's clear he's special. It's clear he will be great, fair, ethical, energetic, my God, and dedicated commissioner. It's also clear he's unique. He'll be the only commissioner with a Rubik's Cube on his bench and a skateboard in his chambers. If you ever want to watch him do a Rubik's Cube, it's kind of freaky. It's amazing. He is also, I think, unique because he has a unique perspective. He understands that justice is not an outcome. Justice is a process. That people are not good or bad, or right or wrong, but that people do bad things sometimes, and they make wrong decisions sometimes. He knows that is why we have the judicial system that we have and why it's the greatest system in the world. Due process is justice, and we all have to play our part in the process for justice to be carried out. Jonathan knows this to be true. He's known it since he was a kid. He's known it since his dad started in the public defender's office, and it's clear in his practice of law and in his life. So Sarah, I know you will continue to support Jonathan unwaveringly in his new role and all of the challenges it will bring. And Owen and Wesley and Elise, she's on the move. That's new. This moving thing is kind of new. I want you to know that your dad is a very, very special part of our community, and we appreciate him very much. And we appreciate you sharing him with us. And I know that the three of you will continue to inspire him to be a great commissioner. So to Jonathan, my friend and colleague, congratulations on your appointment. I'm a mess on your appointment as commissioner. I'm so excited for you. To the Superior Court, and thank you for your continued service to our community.
All right, and now for what we all came here for. Repeat after me. I, Jonathan Fattarsi, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And that I take this obligation freely.
And I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
And that I will well and truthfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Truthfully and faithfully.
Truthfully and faithfully upon which I'm about to enter.
I have a lot of people to thank today. And I know that there's a tradition that you save your biggest, most important thank you for the end as kind of a big crescendo. But the truth is, I cannot wait to thank and introduce my biggest supporter, and that's my wife, Sarah Fattarsi. A few months after we got married and moved to Stockton, I took Sarah to one of my favorite restaurants growing up. I took her to Angelina's. And when we were there, we were talking. We haven't been back, so we didn't like it. But we were talking. She asked, would you ever want to be on the bench? And I answered very quickly, no. And she kind of shrugged her shoulders and looked down at her food. And I said, well, what do you think about me being on the bench? And she said, well, I think it'd be kind of cool. And so I'm doing this for a lot of reasons, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm doing this to impress anyone. But if I impress someone, I would be very excited.
You're impressing me.
We have 3 amazing kids. 2 of them started out with us when we went on this adventure. That is Owen and Wesley Fattarsi. And joining us along the way was my daughter, who's crawling around in the well here. We are part of a much bigger family, and my sister-in-law Karen is here with my 2 nephews, Colin and Wyatt. I think they literally just pulled in from Ojai. Am I right, Karen?
We shouldn't talk about how quick we got here.
Okay. I did hear traffic trials on it. There are 3 families together, and we have 9 children. And we all stay together several times a year for weekends at a time in Karen's house. If that doesn't tell you how close we are, I don't know what will. My mom is here. My mom used to write romance novels. And some of you might be wondering what it's like to read a steamy love scene that is written by her mom. Yeah, it's weird. My stepdad John's here too. They met when my mom moved into a condo in Goleta. And there was a patio in the back that and you looked out over the yard and a few of the other condos. We could see John's condo there too. We used to hang out in the back and cook and have dinner, and she eventually met John. And if you didn't miss that, this is a woman who has so much romance in her heart. A man landed in her backyard. It was my stepdad, John, and he has been a source of stability and calm in our lives. And he showed us the Santa Barbara Mountains. West Camino Cielo was my favorite painted cave. And I'm so grateful you're part of our family, John. My Aunt Mary is here. We spent an amazing summer at my Aunt Mary's and Uncle Tom's. And we're all here today. My mom was there, my family, my cousin Jennifer, my brother Christian. We went to the beach just about every day. And then we came back home and we hung out by the pool and we talked about our day and watched the sunset over Goleta Valley. I'm sorry. Some of you know that I like to write some code. And it impresses people sometimes, but it's kind of a joke compared to the people in my family. If I were to tell you that there was one guy we lived with who had one of those tech jobs where he could stay home and show up to work in a t-shirt and some tennis shoes and come and go as he pleased, you'd probably think it was someone a lot younger, like my brother maybe. But that was my Uncle Tom. We lost my Uncle Tom to cancer this year. But I gotta tell you something. I have a feeling that he would be so proud of what came out of his incubator that summer. We have my cousin Jennifer, who she started working at PeopleSoft in a tech job when not a lot of women were doing that. She has her own business now. We have my brother, and I think it's okay to say this, right? He is a principal engineer at Cisco Systems. That's kind of a big deal, and not a lot of us understand that but I'll just put it in comparison. His first job was at NASA. NASA. And this is a bigger deal than that. his wife Carolyn's here, and Jennifer's beautiful family's here. Dr. Aria is here. Their two children, Nicholas and Melina. I'm so grateful that you're here today. It is absolutely impossible to talk about my years in Santa Barbara without talking about my friend Dale Rodenborn. Dale's a friend I've taken for granted for a long time. And I didn't realize how far we'd come until there was one day we were at Evan's birthday party and we were watching our kids play together. We get together every year and chase them around a pumpkin patch. And I actually took her for granted today. She texted me and asked for the address, how to get here. And there was another text right away saying, never mind, your wife told me. My friend Maureen Jacob is here, who I haven't seen in years. I've known Maureen since college. We were on the student government together at Stanislaus State. That was a service I was so proud of that last year of college. I spent most of my time before law school emailing Maureen back and forth every day. That was before people texted. You could email a lot more than you could text. She guided me through being a lawyer, helped me through the bar, and I am grateful that she is here today. I'm grateful for your friendship. So I brought a book, and everybody was real worried about it, because they want this to be short. I mean, I won't be too long, but this is the 1985 Penal Code. First of all, I don't have to introduce my dad or anything. You guys remember my dad? My dad was a deputy public defender in this county for almost 30 years. I worked in private practice for a little while, and I appeared in other courts. And this was the only place where I didn't have to spell my last name. It just doesn't mean much to say, Jonathan Fattarsi, Your Honor, F-A-T-T. I know my dad was proud. I know he's proud. When I was in 1985 was kind of a big year for us. That was the year we moved to Stockton. We moved into a house. It was Alan and Helen Ellis's house on Lucille Avenue, and that was our home. That year I had a teacher in 6th grade who said, you have to figure out what you're going to do with your life and go find somebody who has that job and go interview them. And I chose to interview my dad. And I know what you're thinking. That's adorable. but that's not the truth. I was a shy kid, and the thought of going up to a stranger and talking to them about their job terrified me. I knew my dad had a job. I knew my dad, so I chose to be a public defender. So after school one day, my dad took me into the office so we could talk about being a public defender. And it was back in the old Canvas building. Pete Fox was there, Jim Larson was there, Georgia McElroy was there, Ellen Schwarzenberg was there, Vicki Delp was probably there. There were probably a number of members on the bench of my new colleagues who were probably there. Roger Ross was probably there. Dick Giuliani was certainly there. And I remember sitting down in the office. My dad was moving from one office to the next, and it was kind of a big deal because it had a window. And Sam Behar came by and said, and explained that, when you have a window in this office, that's when you've made it. I never had a window. Well, it must have been, I don't remember the specific date, but it must have been the day close to January when the new penal codes were coming out. And I imagine that Pat Nelson came by to pass out the new penal code. If that's the truth, then it was the only time I had a conversation with Pat Nelson that didn't have something to do with me not signing in the sign-in sheet. Yeah, Pat, I went there.
Yeah.
The penal codes, they're kind of silly, but it's a tradition in the public defender's office that we all really enjoy. You get a penal code every year, and they write your name on it, and you know that it's yours. And most of the people in the office have a shelf that has your penal codes lined up, and you know the first year you started in the office, and you know what year it is today, and they all have your name on it. And every once in a while, someone leaves us, and the penal codes get scattered all throughout the office, but they'll still have the names on it. So you'll see Ed Shaver, and you'll see Terry Healy. And you'll remember these names in the office, and you'll see them. Well, I asked my dad what it was, and I remember specifically the color of it and everything, because it was brown and it was orange. And he explained, this is the penal code, this is what the law is. And I walked away with that, thinking that, you just read the law, and that's what it is. So like you could read this book from start to finish, and you'd know what the law is. It's a little more complicated than that, actually. One of the things I remembered, what I remember most about that time and that day in the office, and every other day that I went to the office, was the camaraderie that we all felt together. It was a sense of belonging and a sense of family. And it was in sharp contrast with what you hear about public defenders' offices. You hear about overworked, underfunded offices throughout the country. And I know this to be true. I've been to conferences where we're here talking about death penalty cases, and everybody has a death penalty case. There's requirements you have to meet for death penalty cases. And someone would raise their hand to the gasp of everyone and say, this is my first case I've ever done. So we know that what happens here in this county doesn't happen throughout the country. And we're very fortunate that we have the office that we have. A few years later, while I was in the office, this is about maybe 2 years ago, I started doing research in books. I do my research like most attorneys. I do it all online. There's Westlaw, LexisNexis, OnLaw, Google. And so, normally, if I have a question, like most of the people in the public defender's office, I type it into my phone and I send it to Nelson Liu. And just as a footnote, I spoke to Nelson. Nelson couldn't be here today, and I'm using the term footnote specifically as a reference to Nelson Liu because that's where some of his magic happens. Nelson couldn't be here today because his son Venice was born yesterday. He and Betsy are very happy. They are very healthy. And he told me he just struggled through his first diaper. I told him to stick with it. So I started doing research in books, the old-fashioned way. And I never really had a connection to the law that I had when I started reading actual books. There's some kind of magic that happens when you read text on a page that was printed the same year it was published. If you see pages that are worn, you know the opinion is worn. If you see lines and phrases underlined, and you see notes scribbled in the margins, then you know somebody was here earlier than you with the same question you're trying to answer. It gave me a realization that there is a life to the law. At first glance, they're words on a page. But through the research and our interpretation, the way we argue the law in court and tell people what it is, we breathe life into that law. And we pass it on to the people ahead of us. It fascinates me, and that's the way it's always been. It fascinates me that our founding fathers decided that the saddlebags on your horse, the contents within them, are private and shouldn't be searched. And based on that same rationale, law enforcement is limited on its ability to go to rifle through your cell phone. How did they know? I had a case one time where I was challenging an extradition from someone from Germany. And the case that was sustained was murder on the high seas. And was lacking on detail, but I'd like to imagine that it was pirates making them off the plane. Anyway, I was going through reading books one day, just looking for volumes, and I went through one of the junk sections, and I recognized this penal code with the brown and orange distinct coloring. And I decided to borrow it from the office. And I don't think Miriam would mind because, after all, it had my name in it. This was back before they put the first initial on it. I was so proud to be a public defender in this county. We live in a country that values liberty with such reverence that anytime it's threatened, we provide one of our most expensive services. And we are so fortunate to live in a county that values that it supports the office that we have, that provides that service with fearless dedication and zeal, and has always done that for more than 51 years now. I made amazing friends in the public defender's office, and I got to follow my dad around. Now, my dad gave me some very good advice every time I had a case, very good guidance. I would come in with my problem, and he would give me the same guidance he gave everyone else. He would start by asking, is this a misdemeanor? It was extraordinary guidance, because it led me next door to my stepmom, Doran Berg, whose office was always open for me. It's a lot like leaving home, leaving the public defender's office, and I've taken comfort in, I'm joining an amazing alumni of public defenders who are on the bench, and I can't say how wonderful it's been to have been welcomed, to have been selected, and to have been welcomed the way I have. I would be remiss, well, I also should point out, I think Ron Northup probably has a Rubik's Cube too. I would be remiss if I didn't single out two people two of my colleagues, and they are Commissioners Jane Lee and Aaron Guy Castillo. Neither one of them could be here today because they were at Judges College, so I think it's safe to talk about them. Both of them have provided extraordinary guidance. Aaron in helping me learn new areas of law very quickly, and Jane through our heart-to-heart conversations, helping me to find my compass and giving me the courage to follow it. So last week I had coffee with Heather. It was one of those times where I left the coffee shop like, Heather, why haven't we done this more often?
Because we didn't know each other.
Good excuse. So she asked me, what would you say to that public defender that started 13 years ago? And the question blew me away. I did say it would all work out, because it did. But we're going to have to go pretty soon, people, because of these. No, I even roundtabled this question at the dinner table a little bit, and it of course led to questions about time travel and then, end game. And I won't spoil the ending, but, right? As I stand here today, I am overwhelmed by the fact that he and I were in extraordinarily the same circumstances. Both of us were given an incredible gift. And with that, the opportunity to do great. So assuming I would be able to get a word in edgewise, because back then I knew everything, I would challenge him to constantly look outside himself and seek justice. I would challenge him to do that, even if it meant leaving home. And as I stand before you today in the same position, I would like to accept that challenge. I want to thank the bench. I want to thank, on behalf of my family and on behalf of me, who is humbled by this responsibility, I want to thank you all for this privilege, and I look forward to living up to the very high expectations you have. Thank you, everybody.
I would like to thank everybody that came here. I would like to remind you that there is food and beverages on the 12th floor, the jury assembly room. Everyone is invited. If we could all give my court staff and the sheriffs here a hand for help setting this up. It's been this concludes this formal public swearing in.